We saw designing phase, we saw development phase. How to do testing? Means testing itself is a kind of another phase, and it is followed by the maintenance of the software. So, uh, the biggest means a tester who is testing the source code, he need not understand the design, not required. But person who write the program means he implement who actually develop the software, it should be guaranteed the documentation is nice. And in Python, means Python is a kind of language, means only the developer need to write the code. Otherwise, it provide all the architecture. Means third party integration for the testing, documentation, and then maintaining the reference cycle of a variable, and so many things. So, anyway, there is no new and delete or malloc and DLO. So everything means memory management up till documentation. So everything is provided by Python. So Python, the person who is developing the code. So Python has mainly three layers. So here the term comes as execution unit. What is the execution unit? So it can be module or package. It can be class. It can be a function. Means this is what is expected from a tester who is testing. So who is writing the test suite. So in the module can itself behave as a class. I think it has to derive from some sys module type or something like that. And then if someone sets module class to some sys module type or something like that, then it becomes a module class. So the idea is that documentation is can be provided at each execution unit, either it is in module, class, and function, and all are same. I mean, all are data structure or all are class, whatever is feasible. So it's not like that function is different and class is different and module. All are first class objects. They can be passed like an integer and float to any function arguments. Okay, so class or object, all are data structure. Means even the data type, integer, float, or imaginary number, all are data types. It can be mutable or immutable. So that is another scenario. But all are kind of first class variable. They can be passed. It takes as reference. So when someone prepares, we are talking that test suite writing person, then he need not understand the designing much, not required. But whatever the layer at which he is writing the test script. So we talked about the abstraction layer. So at the bottom layer, we have the solid thing that is available at the bottom layer, and then abstraction layer starts. And each abstraction layer has its own nature, and it behaves as an independent living entity. And when it is a living entity, it has a well-defined internal state. So, enter the layer in the architecture. Everyone has internal and external state. If I talk about the design pattern, then it follows the FlyWeight design pattern, where the intrinsic and extrinsic components take place. So, and the communication between the layer means the higher layer, it communicates with the lower layer. I would say guide the lower layer. That is, we generally say it should be through builder design pattern, because communication should happen in an abstract way only. And a higher layer must not think much that what actually should be implemented inside the code. It will talk at abstraction layer only, like we talked that circulatory system or healing of circulatory system or respiratory system or nervous system in body from mind. So mind should set the same signal as a heal rather than intricate. So the actual abstraction layer which does the work, it knows the intricacy. So otherwise it will be abstract one. Now a person who is writing the code, he knows this, that whatever layer he is writing test case for, that layer has two components. One is external component, one is internal component. For external component, he knows that when external signal comes, then the component takes the signal and then it change its behavior and then reply with the result. So that is the means any box if we take, there is input and output. So output will come back to the person who has ordered, means person who is expecting the output. So person gives guidance that I want this way. Like I talked that if I take this part, then this is an abstraction because this is not the original thing. It has made of this palm and fingers, and then inside bone and nervous system and blood vessels. So these are the physical entity. But this area is only abstract. But from outside, from brain, if it comes one kind of extrinsic signal, then it does like this. If it has come extrinsic signal, then it does like this. It has extrinsic signal, then it does like this. So whatever from the outside, the extrinsic signal what it comes, then internal state changes. And as per the internal state is changing, 90% of the code I say should be internal state. An extrinsic component can come as a global, non-local, or through the function. If it is a function, then function parameter, or if it is class, then class attribute can be set, or class variable can also be set through its constructor. So otherwise, class itself it can have attributes; those becomes its namespace of the class. So whatever layer we are. So when we are talking abstraction layer, then each layer how we will write the test case. Inside each layer also, if there are classes, packages and functions, then we have, for each entity we have to think about. So tester should read the documentation and then he should clearly understand that what is expected by the big boss. So if big boss expect 20 different behavior, then he has to prepare test case for all 20 signals. Signal would come in abstract way, that anyway he would write the same way, and 20 separate test case he has to make for 20 different kind of guidance that it may receive from the higher. If a module can receive from 5 different modules and each has 20, then 100 test cases needs to be written. So this is external. Now, what about now when he receives the external component, then means external signal through builder design pattern or whatsoever, and it becomes the extrinsic parameter when it goes inside the module, inside the execution unit, because up to function only he has the access. Inside that he cannot do anything. So then he completely rely upon the return value of the function. So when someone write test case, then he will take care of the all possible extrinsic signaling, and then he will prepare test case and what should be the result. Now he can use any Python test unit or whatsoever, because test units are nothing but you call any execution unit with some test data, and then you match with whatever is expected. That's it. That is the testing. So all the test case through the extrinsic variable he would receive, and then he would execute whatever the return is, whatever the expectation is, he would match and he would assert. So that is one thing. So that is extrinsic testing. What about intrinsic testing? So intrinsic testing is whatever the return value it is showing. So that is the intrinsic testing. But what about phases? So if a function is executing, a class is executing, a module is executing, what about the phases? Generally it is guided by tracing and logging. So tracing and logging, it should be designed in a phase, it should be written in a phase, in a kind of manner that it should read from a configuration file. Means at what level it is logging, at what level it is tracing. So a person who is writing test case, then he should include the logging and tracing in the test case itself. So this function received for this extrinsic parameter, this is the intrinsic return value it received, that is matching or not, that is the expectation, one thing. And what is the tracing and logging? it is if it is showing hazard, means there is a non-matching, then he can kind of go ahead and change the logging level to info only. Otherwise, if it is passing, the critical is also okay. Then, but everything should be at runtime. He should not go and change or something like that. So that should also be feasible. So like tracing and logging can be read from a configuration file, and if there is some kind of signal, unique signal, so it can kind of it can register for a particular signal, and if a signal comes, then the the configuration file should be reread. So tracing and logging should be reread. So an external entity which want the tracing and logging or test suite writer in his test suite, if he sees that result is failing, then in test suite itself he would recall the that function, and before that he would generate a signal, so that in the signal handler it would reread the configuration file which is changed meanwhile. So now it will change the logging and tracing, and so the data would be kind of available. So this is the testing. That's it. So I mean, if developer write a program very nicely, then tester is also not required. Means while he is doing the testing of the program, then if he takes care of this much, all the extrinsic variations, combinations, and then whatever the function or class or module is returning, then matching that with whatever is expected, and then changing the configuration file and raising the signal, so you should read the configuration file, and then reading the tracing and logging. So all the tracing logging of the function which did not match would be available at info level or warning level or at lower level. Done. Just read the report and done. So that is about testing. Now we will kind of see how we can